Hi there, Mike Hall here, CEO of Paul Fraser Collectibles and Just Collecting. Now, today I brought in a stamp which is a worldwide legend that I'm going to share with you. It's been called in the past the Mona Lisa of philately, and you'll shortly see why. It's actually Canada's most valuable, rarest, and sought after stamp, but it's also one of the most formidable and revered stamps in the whole world. It always appears in those lists, the top 20 most valuable stamps of all time. And it's a real privilege to be handling that stamp today. Now, the beauty and the delicacy of the design in this stamp is what makes it a work of art. Now, it's actually so rare, this stamp, that in the whole 23 years I've been in this business, this is the first time I've handled a used example of it. And it's one of those stamps that's something of a legend. And as a legend, it has a nickname. And that nickname is the Black Empress. Now, let me share with you the Black Empress. Now, as you can see, it is still on a Stanley Gibbons stock card. We were the last company to sell the stamp before us, that is. It was issued in 1851. It has a 12 old pence denomination, and it's one of Canada's very first stamp issues. As you can see, it is stunning. Now, how rare is this stamp? Well, despite the fact 51,000 of these stamps were printed in 1851, the 12D face value at that time was for a very limited number of destinations, which included Newfoundland, the British West Indies, and also the double rate to the US from Canada. Now, because of that, there was very limited need for it, and also at that time, there was still the option of not using the prepaid postage system. You could send a letter where the recipient would pay for it. And because of that, there was only 1,450 of these stamps that actually sold in the 3.5 years they were for sale. Now, the remainder all went back to the post office and they were destroyed in 1857. And today, there are just 130 examples known to exist. The problem, though, is that the vast majority that do survive are not in good quality. They have condition issues, and in the used examples, the vast majority have very heavy cancellations. Most of them don't look great. This is a different matter. The one we have is one of the finest quality used examples in existence. Now, it is a masterpiece of design. Just let me show you one more time. Now, the slender neck on a young Queen Victoria. Now, this is called the Chalon Head, which is named after the Swiss portrait painter Alfred Chalon. Now, he was commissioned to do a portrait, a painting of Queen Victoria for her very, very first appearance as Queen. And now the painting was intended as a gift for her mother, and that painting was then used for the basis of this stamp design for Canada's first stamps. And it is today still considered one of the most beautiful stamps in the world. Now, I'm keeping it up for a bit longer because I'm now going to talk about its condition a bit more. I'll try and get it closer so you can see it. Hopefully you can see that. Now, as you can see, it's intense and deep, the colour, with a really strong detailed impression, which means that it was almost certainly one of the very first of the stamps printed from the printing plate. The other thing to bear in mind is the size of the margins. Now, generally, it's very, very rare to find 4 large margins like that on these stamps, which were cut by hand from sheets. The biggest factor, though, is the cancellation. The part target cancellation leaves the portrait entirely clear, which is one of the biggest elements of valuing a used stamp. There are also no other defects. It's in perfect condition. It's in an incomparable state of preservation. Now, the next thing to talk about in this stamp that we have is the provenance. It has exceptional provenance. It once belonged to the Dale Lichtenstein collection, who was a collector called Alfred Lichtenstein. He was a very famous collector, and he died in 1947. And he handed his collection over to his daughter, who was Louise Dale, and she continued to build that collection. And she actually became famous as being the first woman to hold a number of prominent positions in philately that had always historically been held by men. Now, she died in 1967, and H.R. Harmer auctions in London were commissioned to sell the collection, which took place, such was the size of the collection, it took place over 11 sales between 1968 and 1971. The stamp was then sold at that time as lot number 56 in November 1968. It was then sold again in 1987 and became part of the John Foxbridge collection, which was another famous collection which was ultimately sold and had an insurance value of $4 million. That was sold under the title of the Treasures of Philately in a private offering, so we don't know what the value of the realization was. But it took this collection took 15 years to form and had the highest accolade in terms of awards and recognition internationally. Now, 35 years have passed since then, and we have this in our possession, and it truly is a privilege to have it. Finally, the stamp comes with, as a matter of default, you would expect, a British Philatelic Association Certificate of Authenticity. Now, interestingly, the certificate also refers to the provenance that I just explained, which is very useful because it shows that this stamp and this provenance can be independently proven. So, what would you think it's worth? Now, bearing in mind a stamp like this has a gravitational pull that's almost mystical in nature, you would expect it to be one of those stamps that goes up in value over time, and that is the case. In 2002, the Standard Guinness catalogue listed the value of a used example at £30,000. Today, that value is £100,000, so it's went up by more than 3 times in value over the past 20 years. Now, that's what you expect to see when you're looking at the top of philately. The most desirable, the most coveted items are the ones that over the long term generally go up in value the most. What's also interesting though with this stamp is the Canada catalogues that are used are called the Unitrade catalogues. They actually list the value of a used example at 250,000 Canadian dollars, which is round about £150,000. Now, thinking about recent sales, the last time I saw a used example of a similar quality to the one we have sell, it was in an auction in London in 2018, and at that time it realised £117,000. Now, the highest value realised for a mint example is almost $500,000, which is quite staggering. Now, bear in mind, this used example we have is known to be one of the finest in existence and with the provenance to match that finery. Despite that, we are offering it for sale at a price of £90,000. Now, not only is that a discount of 10% against Standard Guinness catalogue price, below recent auction realisations, it is a whopping discount to the Canadian catalogue value. And I think it's a truly illustrious purchase that you could make if this is in your area. Now, this could quite possibly be Canada's first $1 million stamp in the future, and it would be a real privilege to own the stamp. If you're interested in acquiring it, please contact me at info@paulfrasercollectibles.com. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I hope that you enjoyed sharing this wonderful stamp with me today. Thank you very much.